Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yesterday we discussed about the upgrade rates. The upgrades are two kinds of upgrade. One is in place upgrade and side by side upgrade. So in place upgrade, there is no terminology or a process for the migration, like migrating. But side by side upgrade, most of the terminology we used migrate. Migrate means moving the database, moving the logins, moving the jobs, and moving the linked servers, moving the operators from lower server to higher server. That process, we what we did like from the old server to higher server. Sorry, we build the new machine and uh, then what we did, we moved the database from one machine to another machine. That's kind of a different process for the upgrade. Today we are discussing about the migration. Okay, so the migration is a very important. So if you know the side by side migration, then migration is very easy. Why? Because the same process we will follow for the moving the databases, the same process, but that will be little bit different. Little bit different means like the migration will go for the same kind of a version or edition, or maybe say lower to higher. So when we need to perform the migration, what are the situation we need to perform the migrations, and what are the prerequisites, and what are the post checks for migration. If you know the backup and restore and fixing the ARPANE users, then migration is 80% is done. Why? Because the migration is depends for the backup and restoration. So that is the reason I'm telling from the day one onwards. If you know the backup and restore, the DB job almost is fulfilled. So here the migration. Uh, uh, do you remember? Like I discussed one topic, like detach and attach, backup and restore, and moving the files one location to another location. That time I explained that detach and attach and backup and restore is the one of the process for migration. So we'll go for discuss about the migration and what are the scenarios like when we need to perform the migration. So let me take my notes, then we'll go for things. So migration move means moving the one or set of database, one environment, one server to another server. So let me go for diagram. This is the one server. This is the another server. So let me take instance. Let me let me take instance here. We can like a databases. So here migration means moving the one database or set of databases from one server to another server. So here, comma. The situation, what are the situation for moving the database one server to another server? The situations are as part of the launch or deployment or go live. Okay. What is that means? As part of the launch, a deployment or go live. So the thing is like migrating the database from deployment to test and test to production. This we can call like a launch, development to test and test to production. So what is the like a launch? Launch means like we are starting the business. Okay, so we are entering the business. We are newly starting the business and newly introducing the operations to the business. What the people will do? Generally, the people directly we cannot put the database or code into the production environment. So for that, what they will do, the development team will do the development. Like they will backend. Uh, this is the command control Z. This is the development server. In that development server, what they will do, they will do the deployment. They will do the code testing. They will do the in the development server. Like whenever the any application launch, whenever the any business is launching, what they will do, they directly won't put the code in the production systems. So for that, what they will do, every company development will team will there. The development team, they will test the code. What is that means? Like here we have a one application server. So suppose like we think like we have a restaurant. In the restaurant is trying to open, that we need to put into the like online. So for that, what they need to, they will uh, give the requirement to the one company. So what they will do, they will start testing the code. So for that, we have a front end server. Whatever the data we have, like providing the inputs into the front end, that has to pull from the back end. So think like a we have a, this is the one menu. What is this one? In the front end, we have a menu. So whenever we click the menu, come on, whenever we click the menu, what is to do? It will, eh, come on. Whenever they click the menu in the front end, it will generate the code and it will send that code to the backend database server. So for that, development team will provide the requirement code design. Whenever the front end clicking the button, that is giving the required information or output to the developer, like front end users, that is giving properly or not. And they will design how many front end screens they required and how many images they need and what type of headers they need and what type of font they need from the front end design. Kind of like if you go here, so when I go for any kind of a what I meant to say, Amazon. So this is the front end. In the front end, we can see this many kind of a radio buttons, like this kind of a one image, this kind of a one thing, this kind of a address and a font as. Whenever you click this option, okay, what it will do, whenever you press this button, it has to go to the database server and it has to pull the data. So by looking at the front end, we can see only one button. But in that backend, lot of packages, lot of code will generate. Okay. And it will pull the required data. So if you click the button, it has to give the relevant data. Suppose if I ask for the products, it has to provide the product data. Instead of that, if it's giving different data, that may be huge loss. So for that, what are the information they have? They will putting into the development server. The development team will develop this front end, and in the required data will be there. Once the development is done, what they will do? They will move this database to test server. Okay. So whatever the data development is there, what they will do? They will move the data to test server. Okay. So test server, they will move the data. From here, testing team, they will do the test cases. Okay. Test cases means they will launch all the front end pages, and they will do some entering the values, and they will test it. All the data is coming as expected or not. So here the development team develop the data, and testing team test all the modules or pages are working as expected or not. So once everything is done, what they will do? They will move this data to the production environment. They will move this database to production environment. This process we can call like a launch. Launch means we launching the our application. We launching the business. That scenario we can use the migration. See here the migration is like we have the database here. Initially the data will be sitting here. The development team will develop the code. Once it done, what they did, they moved the database from development to test server. Testing, they will test the code. Once the testing is done, they will move the test database to production environment. So here the database name will be dev database name. Here database name will be test database name, and the here production environment database name will be like a prod. They will use the as per the naming convention. So some environment, what they will do, development and test server and the QA server, all are database sitting into the one server. Production will be sitting into the different server, and development testing all will be sitting into the one environment. So the moving the database from development to production, that time the process we can call like a launch. That time we can use the migration. The migration means what I mentioned, moving the database from one server to another server. That is the one scenario. So another scenario like a database refresh. Database refresh. So last week we discussed the database refresh, right? Database refresh is nothing but the moving the production database from one server to another server. So this is the production database. I need to development team here already production database up and running. There is a one requirement from the business. They want to change front end design. They want to change the front end menu. So for that, they want to do some test case, do code modifications. So for that, we cannot do the code testing or implementation. So for that, what we need to do, we need to move the production database from production environment to development server. Let me take here dev test prod. So the database refresh, like we are moving the production database backup, taking the production database backup and putting into the development server. In the development server, development team, what they will do, they will do the code testing and they will do the code modifications, and then they will test it. If everything is as expected, then the same step they will performing in the production. So that is the reason like the migration we can use in the database refresh. So the database refresh may be production to development or development to production. So refresh means overwriting the data or moving the data from one database to another database. Refresh means overwriting the data from one data to another data. So that may be production to dev. Generally, the database refresh means moving the production database back up to development server. That is we use for regular activities. So that scenario we use to the migration. That migration means moving the data from one server to another server. That is the another scenario for using the migration. So launching the application or launching the business or database refresh. So database refresh, why? Because for development team, they want to get the real data, exact data. Why? Because the development team in the development server, they will have the old data. But the application like team or business, they need the new design. So for that, they need the exact copy or new data from the production so that they can do the code testing on the development server. That is the reason we will take the production database backup and restoring into the development server. That process we can call like a database refresh. So database refresh topic, you can refer the previous classes. So another situation is like a migration. Like for migration is like moving the moving from old hardware to new hardware. So yesterday we discussed it, like for the upgrade. So the upgrade will perform whenever we like we have a legacy hardware, legacy operating system. At that time, we want to get rid of the old hardware for the what are the database we're keeping. We want to keep the our database to the higher new hardware configurations. So think like a this is the my server. This is having 2008 R2 operating system, and disks are very physical hard disk. Those are the SSD. These are HDD disk, and also networks are very slow network. So for that, business will be very run very slow. So if I have the new hardware like a SSD disk and a premium disk, and operating system is a new operating system, network bandwidth is a uh, uh, network cables and network bandwidth good for the new hardwares. So that scenario, we want to move the data from one server to another server. So that is kind of like a we want to move the data from legacy hardware to uh, better performance hardware. That time we can use for the migration. So one more scenario, we can use the migration moving the between the data centers. Data centers means like my data sitting into the one data center is kind of like a east to west to region. I want to move the my business to another environment data center. So that's time we can take the backup and we can restore into the different server. So that time we can use the migration. So migration is means like a moving the data from one environment to another environment. So moving the data between the data center. So if you go for like a uh, on-prem environment, on-prem environment in the data centers are physical data centers. Okay, so the data will be sitting into the uh, 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 one particular buildings, and uh, if we want to like provide the more high availability and some other disaster to overcome the disaster recovery. Suppose if we keep the data center in the Mumbai, the like in the Mumbai, we have data centers. Most of the our India data centers will be sitting into the Mumbai and Kolkata, some other locations. But 80% of the data centers will be sitting into the Mumbai. But the risk is for the Mumbai nearest to the sea area. So if something tsunami or maybe if a terror people attack, what they will do, our data centers, they will like we will lose the data center. If we lose the data center, what will happen? Our entire data will be lost. So for that, what we can do, we can move the data center data to one area to another area. So that time we need to move the data, right? So that scenario we can use the migration. So that is the one purpose. and moving the data from data center to Azure environment. Azure environment, like the data will be sitting into the different of cloud platforms. That may be data center to the different of regions. Uh, Not only one graphical, they will be data will be keeping into the geographical. Like one data center will be sitting into the one location, another data will be sitting into the different region, and the data will be moving. So that scenario we can use for the migration. The basically the what the theme is like moving the data between one server to another server. Here the moving the data between one data center to another data center. Data center means that will also computer, that will also operating system, that will also network cable, right? But the backend, our data will be sitting into the one computer, one hardware. For that, we need to move data from one environment to another environment. That is the situation we used for the migration. So migration we can use when the part of the launch, when the part of the database refresh, and when the part of the get rid of the old hardware to new hardware, and moving the data from data centers to one more data center. And another scenario like migration means we want to move the data from customer environment to our environment. What is that means? Like we are going to onboard the customer. We are acquiring the customer from one company to another company. What is that means? See, I have the as of now, I have one company. For that entire data, I'm the only managing. So for that data, entire data will be sitting into the my data center. My data center will be maybe I am the business is the business will maintain the data centers, the business will maintain the developers, the business will maintain the code. But they want to sell the that company to the another company. So what they will do, the company, they will want to migrate the data from their environment to our environment. Okay, that time what we need to do, we need to build the new operating system, and we have to take the that production database to from their environment to our environment. So that time we can use the migration. So that is the situation. We'll go for the migrations. So here we have two things: prerequisite of the migration and post perform of the migrations. Now let me stop the recording, and I will start one more recording for the actual process. So this is the scenarios when we need to perform the migration. So in the real time, we used to use database refresh and moving the data centers from one data to another data, and moving the data from customer environment to our environment. So that scenario we used to use the migration and also launching the application as well. Let me stop the recording and let me start that migration prerequisites, and we'll go for the one migration process. The migration process nothing but backup and restore. But we need to understand the terminology. That's it. Let me stop the recording.